All right, thank you everybody very much for coming out for the first quarterly leadership forum of 2023. Happy 2023. Thank you all for being here today, and thank you for everything you do each and every day for your colleagues, for your departments, for your county government, and all of our million-plus residents. So I just want to remind everyone that because of our special guest speaker, today's event is being recorded. So be careful how you act, right? Because it's going to be available for everyone, including your families, to see. So I want to welcome today some special guests for today's session. We have 7 students and 6 leadership team members from our partners at Montgomery College. We're here today, so the Montgomery College folks are over there. And we have 4 students from the Montgomery County Public Schools who are here to listen to Dr. Hrabowski. Today's speaker is a noted international expert in education leadership. So we're thrilled to host our colleagues from Montgomery College and the Montgomery County Public Schools to hear from today's speaker. Shortly, we will be hearing from Dr. Hrabowski, President Emeritus of UMBC. I like to refer to it as UMUC in BC. So there are so many young people from Montgomery County, many of you in this room who are graduates of UMBC or family members that really, because the number of students from Montgomery College from Montgomery County who go there, it should be the University of Maryland, Montgomery County in Baltimore County. We're going to hear about his experiences and reflections on leadership. Dr. Hrabowski is also going to spend a fair amount of his time with us answering your questions so that he can speak to the leadership issues that speak to you. Some of you submitted questions prior to the event. However, we did place note cards and pens at the check-in table in case you come up with questions that you, as you hear from Dr. Hrabowski. If you have any questions, please write them on the note card and raise your hand. Then one of our volunteers will collect the cards. The people who are going to be collecting cards are Talia, Sam, and Adrian. Where are they? So I see Adrian and Talia, and Sam is right back there. So if you wind up with a card, a question, hold it up so that we can pick them up. We want you to know that we've been listening to your feedback about the quarterly leadership forums, and so we've been talking about a way to get them back to the initial purpose for this, which was to talk about ways that you all and we all can improve as leaders, as managers, build our skills, and thus improve our county government. So you're going to see us trying to focus the majority of every meeting on those issues so that we all get something more out of the quarterly leadership forums. So today, as I mentioned, we have Dr. Freeman Hrabowski, an outstanding and accomplished and inspiring leader who will share his experiences, knowledge, and lessons learned from his decades as a leader in higher education in our state, in our country, and globally. Born in 1950 in Birmingham, Alabama, Dr. Hrabowski has been active in civic engagement from a young age. As a child leader in the civil rights movement, he was one of the leaders of the Children's Crusade in Birmingham with Dr. Martin Luther King. Dr. Hrabowski was prominently featured in Spike Lee's 1997 documentary, 4 Little Girls, on the racially motivated bombing in 1963 of Birmingham's 16th Street Baptist Church. Over his 30-year career at UMBC, Dr. Hrabowski transformed UMBC into one of the top schools in the nation for producing high-achieving scholars, researchers, and professionals from underrepresented communities in the STEM fields. He also produced winning national chess championship teams, debate teams, and probably everyone in this room remembers when UMBC defeated UVA in the NCAA tournament, being the first 16th seed ever to defeat a 1 seed. So, but anyone who beats UVA is a good school. So I know there are many UVA graduates in the room, so sorry about that, but including our new Director of Permitting Services, Rabia Sabakan. Where are you? There he is. So I can't stop kidding him about UVA. So Dr. Hrabowski co-founded the Meyerhoff Scholars Program, a landmark program that increases diversity among future leaders in science, technology, engineering, and related fields. In 2012, he was named by President Obama as chair of the President's Advisory Commission on Educational Excellence for African Americans. He serves as a consultant of many of the nation's top scientific institutions, such as the National Science Foundation, the National Institutes of Health, and the National Academies. His accomplishments and accolades span decades, and they continue to grow. He was recently elected to the National Academy of Engineering and was named the inaugural ACE, which I don't have what it stands for, Centennial Fellow. And just in a few hours, so don't tweet this, but just in a few hours, he's going to be receiving the National Academy of Sciences Public Welfare Medal. The medal is the Academy's most prestigious award. So I've had the chance to interact with Dr. Hrabowski for years. He gave me one of the most memorable speeches I ever sat through. And, you know, it reminds you of the progress, one of the progress we've made as a nation. So I grew up here in Silver Spring. I grew up in what I thought was a post-civil rights America with an integrated neighborhood and integrated schools. And I remember the cold water that Dr. Hrabowski splashed on me when he recounted his story. And I hope I'm not going to take something that you're going to use in your speech, but that he did not have a meaningful conversation with a white person until he was 18 years old and went off for college. So I've heard you reflect about, you know, obviously you had words with white residents of Birmingham, but never a meaningful conversation. And it just speaks to, I think, the enormous change that we've had in this country over his lifetime, many of our lifetimes, and the work we all still have to do. So with that, the county executive is going to come up and share a few minutes of his own comments about Dr. Hrabowski.
I'm really happy to be here, and I'm really happy that Dr. Hrabowski agreed to come and speak to everybody. The first time I heard you was at an MLK Day breakfast. And, you know, we go to these things every year. You were probably the most forthright, honest speaker I've heard there in terms of like digging into the magnitude of the problem, not pulling any punches about what's happening in America and what's happened in America, past tense. And I thought it was really brave because we like to celebrate, but uncomfortable celebrations are hard to have. And maybe I run toward danger, but I thought the uncomfortableness of some of the conversation was a good thing to have. We cannot afford to get comfortable in things we should not be comfortable with. In this country, you got really comfortable and cozy with racism, and that's part of the difficulty of one winding it when it seems natural, normal, and part of everyday life. How do you extract it from everyday life? And so that was my first encounter with you. You went on to lead UMBC, and a couple of years ago, I was doing a tour of all the parts of the university system because I was very interested, and you'll see what we put together in Whiteford, North Bethesda is the fruit of all this. But I was looking for what do other people do that we ought to be doing here? What should we be doing here that helps support the sciences and the growth of industry in Montgomery County that other people seem to have nailed better than us? And I got to UMBC. I did see great things at UMB, but when I got to UMBC, I saw a couple of things. One was you had this amazing computing program, and you had integrated it with an incubator, and so people were spinning off businesses. And it's a lot different. You think when I went to school, you got a degree, and you went off into the world, and maybe you got a job. The idea of helping start, launch businesses, and put people together with people who had businesses at early stage, I thought was really, really good, and you had done it at a scale. Because you could also do these things, but not do them at scale, but UMBC had done it at scale, and I was really impressed with it. But the other thing that impressed me more than anything was as we walked across the campus and through the cafeteria and through the library where people were studying, you actually knew the students. I went to University of Maryland, I guarantee you, Dr. Elkins, the only way he knew us is from wanted posters or whatever. We were the ones who were causing trouble, and everybody else was like, you're just here. You had meaningful conversations with people. The kids knew you. It wasn't like you just stopped by and they just, they had small talk with you and were really happy that you had stopped by because they knew who you were. They actually knew you, and you knew them. And I thought that was a really important part of what leadership means. It's not just to be in a position and have people recognize your authority, your power, your status, and your place, but to actually have people know who you are, to be able to have conversations with you. Because how do you lead if you don't know where the people you're leading are going and what they're bringing with them on that journey? And I think that has always informed the work you do, is understanding the place you're in and what it can be and how everybody needs to be engaged in it. So I was really impressed by that. And I thought, I wish everybody felt comfortable putting themselves out in the field with the people they work with to understand, how do we do this journey together rather than how do I lead and you follow. I'm not much of the lead-follow model. Any of you know me that. But the other thing is a personal thing, and I'll embarrass you by saying this again. We were on campus. There was about 45 pounds more of me then. And we were walking across campus, and we kind of separated from everybody else. And he said something to me basically like, I see you're struggling with something I struggled with. And I'm pretty good at denial, because when things don't work, denial is a really good solution, because then you just go along and your own merry way. And I was dealing with diabetes, and my blood sugar was out of control. If anybody know anything about A1C, my A1C was like 11.9. My daily sticks were in the 430 range. When I told my doctor that, he was like, if I had known that, I would have put you in a hospital. And I was enduring that for a while. And I was trying everything online I could possibly get, and it didn't make any difference. And he talked to me about what he did. And I parked it in my brain. I didn't ignore it. But when I finally got to the point, my doctor would go from I give you a 6-month prescription, now a 3-month prescription, now a 3-day prescription. Every 3 days I'd have to go in and get a lecture from the pharmacist for not getting my blood work done. And I was avoiding the blood work. And when I finally went into the doctor, because I got tired of going every 3 days, I was given this box of insulin. And I brought it home, and I said, I'm never taking this. And I did what we talked about. I put myself into intermittent fasting. I added on keto on top of it. And 3 years later, I'm in a much different place than I was when I started. But I wouldn't have done that and known to do it if you hadn't felt comfortable going into a personal space with somebody that, we've talked a few times, but not, anything more than professionally. And for you to have the comfort level to tell somebody, look, I see this, I can help. I felt like, if you can give that kind of advice to me, you kind of operate in a world where you're looking at problems around you and you're suggesting, how do I deal with a problem? How do you deal with a problem? How do we make this better? So in some ways, I'm not sure I'd be here today if I hadn't done anything about where I was. So I'm well aware of that, and I thank you for having the willingness to have a hard conversation. And that's what I think when I think of you. I think of somebody willing to have hard conversations about changing things, whether it's at a personal level or it's at a university level or whether it's at a societal level. And I think your willingness to do this makes a difference. And that's the kind of leadership we want people to exhibit. We want people to be able to connect to the people you lead. You can't lead the people who aren't connected to you unless, the other model is you put them in chains and they follow because they're chained to follow you. That is not a good model of leadership. Leadership is when people say, I want to be part of this mission, I want to move this institution forward, and we're all going to do this together. And that's what I have seen in you. I am really, really happy you're here today. Thank you for coming and talking to my folks. And with no further ado, I will introduce you.
I want you to think about the honesty with which both of these leaders, Rich and Mark, talk today, because they opened up about themselves. I want you to give them a round of applause for that authenticity. It takes a level of security to talk about yourself, and a part of leadership has everything to do with knowing oneself. I begin with poetry. William Carlos Williams said that it's difficult to find news in poetry, and yet men and women die every day because of a lack of what's found there. And I start with words from our beloved and now late Maya Angelou, who said, "Lift up your eyes upon this day breaking for you, give birth again to the dream. Women, children, men, take it, this dream, into the palms of your hands. Mold it into the image of your most public self. Sculpt it into the shape of your most private need. Here on the pulse of this new day, you may have the grace to look up and out and into your sister's eyes and into your brother's face and say simply, very simply with hope, good morning." Give poetry a round of applause. For poetry. For poetry. I am inspired today for many reasons. I always loved coming to Montgomery County because I would tell people they have the largest number of paying, well-prepared customers. That's just real. You really do. I mean, the Montgomery school system, Montgomery College are excellent. I go around the world talking about education, involved in international math competitions or whatever. No place is better than your county. I start with that. But give you a round of applause. You take it for granted. People take things for granted. Does that mean it's perfect? Of course not. Why are you here? Because we can be better. Anytime you have human beings, we can. The line we always use at UMBC was success is never final. There's more to do. There is. But I want to take a minute and ask those brilliant students with whom I spent the morning. Rich and Mark knew they wanted to inspire me, give me some students to talk to, and we worked on a math problem this morning. And I'm going to ask all of them to stand. It was Hannah and Jefferson and Zachary and Gerald and Daniel and Faith and Marie. Where are you? Are you still here? Stand up, stand up, stand up, stand up, stand up. Turn around, let them see your faces. I want you to look into their faces and know that you're looking into the face of brilliance, And the reason I want you to be inspired is they are planning to major in everything from computer science to bioinformatics to nursing. It's very interesting, and they're gonna be leaders. They may be taking care of you one day. Keep that thought, all right? Have a seat, young people. All right, very proud of you. So my message today is simple, and I'm going to talk about 20 minutes. First of all, the president of Stanford gave a talk at ACE, is the American Council on Education. It's right there at 1 DuPont Circle. It's the organization of all college presidents, public, private, 2- and 4-year institutions. And he asked presidents this question. He said, how long can students typically stay with the teacher, with the lecturer, before the student begins to fade? This is for college students. How long do you think it is when in a lecture, when the students are listening, how long do you think before they begin to drift? I heard 7 minutes, 10 minutes, an hour. Oh, you're very optimistic, whoever said that. Very optimistic. It's actually 8 minutes. It's 8 minutes. And the people at NIH will tell you, neuroscientists will tell you, for very disciplined professionals like you, how long do you think they can do it? I heard 2 hours, yeah, right. 12 minutes, 3 minutes. So you're telling me you've already faded out on me already, is that right? I get it. It's actually about 20 minutes. That doesn't mean you don't come back, but you think about what you have to do, right? You've got other things to do, or you end up thinking about home or what you're doing tonight, and students are thinking about when they go back, right? Now, first of all, what's the difference between when I'm standing here and when I come here? What's the difference? Somebody said I can see. What is the big difference? More personal. Well, you said it again. Connected. More engaged. These students are on. They are on. I love it. And even for those of you in the back, raise your hands if you're with me in the back. I'm a math teacher. I've always wanted to make sure everybody's awake. All right? All right? Good. So here's the message. The way we think about ourselves, the language that we use, the way we interact with each other, the things we hold important, our values, will shape not only who we are today, but in the future. And I want to dedicate this talk to Nancy Kopp. And the reason I want to do that is that when I was working in Baltimore City at an inner city college, even before going to UMBC, she would be in the legislature, and she would representing Montgomery County, and I was not from Maryland, and when she first asked me questions, I was so impressed. I was there with the president, and I said, who is she? And they told me, and we couldn't Google that. There was no such thing as Google back then. But I did look her up and saw the background from the University of Chicago, and she became, for me, the best of elected officials for this reason. She represented Montgomery County so well, and many others have done it, but I'm thinking about her. She represented it so well that she realized she was from the most privileged jurisdiction in our state. But she didn't say it, Mark and Rich, she didn't say it with arrogance. She wanted to understand, how do we help others to learn from what we're doing? How do we give support? So she wanted to know about my experience when I was working at an inner city college in my late 20s at Coppin State with the challenge. She wanted to understand the challenges of reading. She talked about the fact that even though Montgomery County is the most privileged, you have your share of poor people too. You have challenges here too. You may be the best educated, but that doesn't mean everybody's at that level. And she was trying to understand what she could do to be supportive of the state and also to help children who would not necessarily be sitting on the front row as really good students. All right? And I use that as my inspiration this morning, that when we think about what's important to us in Montgomery County or in Maryland or in our country, we must think about the fact that whatever we place attention on, whatever we put resources into, will become, whatever we love, will become who we are. If we love to read, then our children will love to read more. If we love math, then more and more children. I loved it when it was Jefferson who stole my heart this morning when he said, I'm not the best at math, but I really want to be better. I'm working on it. I'm working on it. That attitude, right, that was so important. And so when I think about leadership, I think about authenticity. I think about how your top two leaders today opened up about themselves and the difficult conversations we had concerning race, concerning health, right? My line has always been, I went through school very early, I did. I actually went to Hampton at 15. Was supposed to go to Washington at 14. At the last minute, my mother said I wasn't mature enough. But I did go to Hampton at 15, and it was the first, I had only seen whites in one summer because my parents sent me to Massachusetts just to see what it would be like to be in class with white kids. And this was just Springfield, Massachusetts. I've been back now, and I've told them the story. And the fact is, nobody would speak to me, not even the teachers. They were not mean. I was just, in the words of Richard Wright, Ralph Ellison, I was the invisible man, the invisible little kid, little chubby, smart kid. And literally, I'd raise my hand, and nobody else was raising, and they would look right through me. And it taught me how important a teacher is. When the teacher looks at you like they believe in you, you believe it. Give our teachers a round of applause, our teachers. And watch this leadership. How many of you in the room love reading, to read? How many of you love to read? So we all read, and we'll read the paper, we might read sports. The ones who really love to read are those who love to read novels, for example. All right, you read it, right? But now watch this. I want you to be honest. Your leaders have been honest. I want you, this is about leadership, authenticity. How many of you love math? I want to see. Now, either of you are some great liars or you're really impressive. I have never, stand up if you love math. Let me see who you are. Okay. Wow, keep standing. Give a round of applause. Keep standing. Now, before you sit down, before you sit down, I want one of the students to holler out the problem. Now, I'm going to do a song today, but I don't want to see you fail. Wait a minute. Who wants to do it? Who wants to do it? Come on. Ms. Marie? Come here, Marie, quickly. Give Marie a round of applause for me. When you do it. Okay, go ahead. Go ahead.
We have a class of 29 children. 20 of them have a dog.
Yes.
And 15 of them have a cat.
Yes.
How many of them have both?
A dog and a cat. Give her a round of applause. Okay? All right. And you can all sit down, and I will tell you this. If I told you that I would give you $1,000 if one of the adults in the room could come up and tell us the answer, how many of you would be willing to try it? $1,000, huh? Oh, I meant right now. I will tell you, I asked this question to 1,000 math, science, gifted and talented teachers at a conference in Las Vegas. And somebody got up and said, just remember, what happens in Las Vegas stays in Las Vegas. They were all hungover. There was nobody there. Finally, somebody got up with the answer. She had Googled the problem. Do not Google the problem. Don't Google the problem. Why would I take the time to do that? It's to make this point. Right now in America, as I'm working with other countries and they're talking about America, they know that every state, 49 or 50 states went down in math scores during COVID. And so even when I talk about Montgomery County, the fact is that while you are better than most, we in America have a long way to go. If it were not for people who come to this country to go to grad school, to work at NIH, we would not be the leading nation in the world in thinking about science. We would not. We would not. We look at the head of the NSF, Parch is Indian, and I can go down the line of all the people who are. And what I love about UMBC, which reflects Montgomery County so well, is that 60% of our students have a parent from another country. And it does two things. It shows you the hunger of people who come here. And Montgomery County is, I always say, I like saying UMBC feels like the Plaza of Nations at the UN. From all over the world, from every continent. But I also like it because it shows people who've been here for generations the hunger that other people have. If you look at the 20th century and the progress we made in the STEM areas, what you see, quite frankly, is that New York was a hotbed of brain power. New York. And the best of science, and the people who would go on to Harvard, to wherever, right? When we think about Einstein, coming from Germany, you think about just the people. And it was Hrabowski, who won the Nobel Prize in the 40s in physics, who said, when he was growing up, all of his friends' mothers would ask them at the end of a school day, what did you learn at school today? And he said, but his mother, his Jewish mother, was different. She would say, Izzy, did you ask a good question today? And the practice of encouraging his curiosity made him the thinker he became. That's what I want from my students. I want them to ask good questions. I could have spent 2 hours with them. It was so amazing. It was so amazing. And Daniel is still bothered that he hadn't got that right answer yet. He's determined to give me that answer somehow. But it's that passion, that hunger. The same things I'm talking about in my TED Talk that talks about success in science, I would say it would be true in the humanities and the arts. It is about the high expectations of ourselves. What are we talking about as leaders? It's about knowing our stories. I want you to know your story. It's so amazing. I can stand now that I'm slightly over 70, I can say I had 45 years in Maryland, 35 of which were at UMBC, 30 of which were as president. And before that, in the 60s and late 60s and 70s, I was going through that college education and grad school at Hampton, my beloved Hampton, and then the University of Illinois. And before that, it was all the stuff in Birmingham. And the one story that I always tell is I'm sitting in the back of the room, and I don't want to be in church in the middle of the week. One kid wants to be there, and they want me to hear this visitor who is speaking at the lectern. And he says, if the children participate in this peaceful protest, all of America will know that even our young people know the difference between right and wrong, and that they want a better education. And all I could think about was that everybody was always talking about how good the white schools were. And I was thinking about the fact that all of our books were hand-me-down books. They legitimately gave us, they felt, books after white kids had used them for years. They put brown paper bags around them. And my parents couldn't buy my books to read into the school because you couldn't bring in new books because they looked different from everybody else. And I wanted not only my own book, but I wanted to see how kids who were different from me, how they thought. Because I thought, I'm willing to work as hard as anybody else. Because to me, being smart was being passionate, hardworking, curious, willing to do my best. And I wanted to show that. And so I said, who is this guy? His name, of course, was Dr. Martin King. And I went home and said, I gotta go. And what did they tell me? Absolutely not. They said, you're 12. No. And if you go, you gotta go to jail. And I said, you guys are hypocrites. You made me go. I didn't want to go. You made me listen. They gave me the two things I loved, math and food. I was eating M&M's, the good kind of peanuts, right? But when this guy talked, I was just amazed because he said this, and this is what I want to say to you in terms of leadership. He said, tomorrow can be better than today, but it will only happen if we make it happen. That thing about the arc of justice moving in a certain way, it only moves in a certain way if we make it happen, if we bend it, you see. And so my message to you today is that whether you're these young people, 17, 18, 19, 20, or you're 30, 40, 50, 60, the fact is we must feel empowered to change the things that are not what we want them to be. That message, my parents did allow me to go, and it was transformational, because even though we were treated like animals, too many children in there, not enough bathrooms, stink for a week. Dr. King came in the middle of the week and he said, what you do this day will have an impact on generations who've not yet been born. 50 years ago, I couldn't have seen a room like this in America. Even if 30 years ago we just had a few integrated schools, you would not see leaders in any jurisdiction in our country looking as diverse as this group. And you represent best in class. Are you perfect? Absolutely not. But are you best in class? Yes. What does it mean? It should mean as leaders, yeah, we're so good we want to be even better. You know, when we talk about UMBC leading the country and producing these kids who go on to get PhDs, who are now on faculties from Harvard to Stanford, the president of Clemson is one of mine, just a working class white kid, first in his family to go to college. He sends for me on the plane, right? On the Clemson plane, all right? And I get there and he says to South Carolina, here's my president. You go, what? Right? Not accustomed to it. You know, you do know that the UMBC president has a plane also, right? I had a plane. It was called Southwest. Thank you very much. But my message is, and this is the intellectual question, we're going to get into questions, is this. What should be expected of leaders of a county, which is the richest big county in our country, in a state, first of all, I mean, the richest in our state, in a state that is one of the richest in the country, in a country that is by far the most privileged in the world. That is who you are. While you make this every day, think of yourselves as on this one word. No, you represent the leaders in the most privileged place we can find in the world. And so I want you to believe in the significance of the work you do. I realize that many of you are in services and things, and you may not get so much praise, but think about what happens if you don't do your job. Think about all the families who depend on you. I read the recent survey. I mean, you all get A's and B's in all those categories. I mean, you put the two categories together, the A's and the B's, good and excellent, you got 90% the 85 to 90% of the people. Nowhere does that happen. Where does that happen? So I realize mental health issues, other kinds of challenges, burnout, all that's it. But what I would say to you is be inspired. Be inspired by the nobility of the work. I want to close, because we're going to get into questions and answers. I always wanted to believe that children of any race could become the best at anything. I talk with these students about the implications of AI and the need for more ethics and humanities and arts, not just science and technology. But in all my classes at the University of Illinois, I was always the only little kid in math and never saw a professor looking like me. And so when we had COVID and you represent an area where NIH is doing so much, and when one of my little kids who literally we recruited from rural North Carolina, mile off, back to Chapel Hill, now at NIH, was a Maryland resident at the time, Montgomery County, became the first black woman. She co-chaired the group that found that Moderna vaccine. Her name is Dr. Kizzmekia Corbett. I was up at Harvard giving a talk, and there I got amazing students in grad school, but to see her there was the only black faculty member in immunology. Give the first black woman to create a vaccine in the world, Dr. Kizzmekia Corbett, a big round of applause. And there's the message, that it will be the dreams and the values that will shape us. And so I want you to repeat after me: thoughts, words, actions, habits, character, destiny. Now let me show you something. Get up off your feet, and we're going to do it like it's that basketball game for UVA and UMBC. Or it's like when we beat Yale in mock trial a year ago. Big deal. Big round of applause for mock trial. Right. The behavior is based on a value, and the value is honesty. I tell new presidents in the Harvard program, if you lie to people, they will never trust you. One of the points my students said was about trust, right? And so the behavior that shows people, whether it's on something professional or personal, that you care and that you're being honest about it. You're saying it from a good space. You're saying it because you believe it and you care about the person. That leads to the trust. Leaders need to act in such a way that people truly trust them. That to know whether it's good news or bad, it will be the truth. It's seeking the truth that makes a difference in the long run.
So, you recently released this book,
Yes.
The Empowered University. So, Dr. Hrabowski obviously is internationally known for his leadership in higher education. But higher education, in many ways, is a giant bureaucracy.
Yes.
And I've always felt like the politics on a college campus
are unrivaled in any other in any other organization. So I looked up something that you mention in here, and in fact, you were quoting someone else in the geography of bliss.
Oh yes, yes.
Where we are is vital to who we are.
Yes.
By where, I'm speaking not only of our physical environment, but also of our cultural environment. Yes. Culture is the sea we swim in, so pervasive, so all-consuming that we fail to notice its existence until we step out of it. Yep. It matters more than we think. Yeah. You changed the culture at UMBC as an organization. So considering the team you have in front of you are the leaders of Montgomery County, how important is the culture of an organization, and how does one impact or change that culture for the better?
Sure. A very famous business guy said, culture eats strategy for lunch or breakfast. The idea is the culture is the essence of who we are. By the way, the book is written, I'm a co-author, I'm the lead author, but the co-authors are the provost, Philip Rouse, and a Montgomery County resident, Peter Henderson, who really had moved to us from the National Academy of Sciences and is an expert in this work. And what I would say is this, and the subtitle of the book is Shared Leadership, Culture Change, and Success, Academic Success. The point, shared leadership. The first sentence in the book says, it's not about me, it's about us. Leaders understand you don't make it about yourself. It's got to be about other people. Very important, right? And it's empowering other people. And part of our culture was, quite frankly, we were still young. When I went there, we were only 20 years old. We were founded in 1966. Now the new president, who came to us from being dean at Duke, Dr. Valerie Ashby, was born in 1966. It's a great story, it really is. I finished high school in 1966, But the fact is, so we were only 20 years old, so we were still evolving. And you can imagine, we came out of College Park. People came from College Park, then we started hiring from all over the world, but we needed to build our own identity. You'll notice we are a very nerdy school. We're very proud about that. We're very nerdy. We really are. You see a member of the chess team, you bow your head. You see somebody who's good in math, yeah, that's it, right? I mean, it's a place where, by the way, I've never seen an American audience with that many people stand for math. I'm very serious. I mean, you all are just too privileged. It's amazing. I love it. But the key is, it was about being willing, as Mark said, to sit down and have the tough conversations. because we were bragging on the few kids who were making it, going to med school or whatever, but the average student was not doing well of any race. They thought it was a problem of minority students, but we looked at the data. No, the average kid, in fact, what I say in my TED Talk is 2/3 of students who go off to college of all races to major in science or pre-med don't make it. 2/3. That's why only 5% of the degrees are in natural sciences and engineering. We still need them in arts and humanities, but the point is we needed to look in the culture ourselves, because NSF calls first 2 years of math and science engineering in colleges and universities weed out courses. So here's just one action. I remembered, all of you remember this, when you were in college as a freshman, the dean or the president would say, look at the student to your left, look at the student to your right, and then they would tell, one of you will not be here. All right? And so it was a self-fulfilling prophecy. The fact is, in America, we say the graduation rate after 60 years is 60%, but for community colleges, we've got a challenge, and for four-year colleges. So you put it all together, you're talking about maybe 30-some% of people graduating from a 2 or 4-year college within the first 6 years. Now, suppose I told you in hospitals that 2/3 won't make it. You go into the hospital, you got a 1/3 chance of making it. I mean, think about it, that you're going to die if you didn't make, right? And that's the challenge we face in terms of urgency. We've got to help. Millions of Americans started at a 2 or 4-year institution and unfortunately never got a degree or a diploma or a certificate. That's our challenge. And that was what we found, bringing the urgency to it, not just resting on the laurels. You all, I looked at the data last night. You're not just the richest large county Howard County has. I mean, you're the only county in the state that has over 1 million people. You're the only one. And then Prince George's has 900,000, and then the rest, it goes down to 400,000. You know, same thing. You got, and the whole, let me ask you one question about culture in our country. What percent of Americans do you think, when I went to jail in the mid-60s, had graduated from 4-year college? What do you think? In the mid-60s. I heard 12%, somebody else. 5, 10, anybody else? It was 20, okay? How many of you admit you don't know? Tell the truth. So you want to know this because you're not just educated people, you are educators. You're teaching every day in one way or the other. Only 10% of Americans had graduated from college in 1965. And when you break it down, it's broken down by race. At that time, all black and white, because how many of you remember black and white TV? Oh, you look good. You do, because the students say, what do you mean? TV's always been in color. No. We got the first color TV on our block. I thought it meant there were going to be colored people on the TV. That's a true story. But here's the point. Only 2%, 2 to 3% of blacks, only 11% of whites. So in the mid-60s, 90% of Americans had never seen anybody in their family go to college and graduate. Did you get that? Now, talk about changing the culture. After the Higher Education Act, the Civil Rights Act, Voting Rights Act, today we're up to what percent of Americans have a 4-year degree? What do you think? Come on, don't be risk-adverse. Leaders take risks. What I hear? I heard 65, I heard 25. Fair to say, how many don't know? Raise your hands, right? Fact is, so you can always know, only about 35% of Americans have seen somebody in their family graduate from college. 4-year college, okay? All right, and 2-year colleges are more important than ever. 40-some% of all Americans start in 2-year colleges. Give the community colleges and Montgomery College a round of applause. They do a good job. They really do. They really do. So here's the point. All right, just break it down for me. What percent of what is the highest achieving group in America, racially, ethnically? Somebody always tells me black women, but I love it. It's just as wrong as it can be, but I love that confidence. I love it. You keep saying it. You go, girl. Wait a minute. I love it.
That's our Director of Technology and Enterprise Business Solutions.
I love it. You keep saying it, because you know what? You're going to plant that seed, and it's going to get there, right? But it's Asian. You all know that. Nobody wants to say it, but of course it is. It's 55% of Asian Americans from different backgrounds have literally had somebody graduate from college, okay? But it's not every Asian group. We know that Pacific Islanders and others have some challenges, but particularly when and let me ask one other question. This is an honest question now. How many of you believe that in the world there are many more brilliant Indian and Chinese children than American children? There are many more brilliant Chinese and Indian children than American children. People cringe when I say that. They go, oh God, he didn't say that. Now, you might be thinking it, you're not saying it. Well, it is not a politically incorrect question. That is a mathematical question. There are 1.3 billion Chinese in the world, 1.2 billion Indians in the world. You put those two together, you have 2.5 billion people. What is 10% of 2.5 billion? Don't you? Let me leave it saying Montgomery County, no basic math. What's 10% of 2.5 billion? 250 million, right? 250 million. And we only have 320 million Americans. So there are that many geniuses from those two countries as we have citizens. You get my point? So it's understandable. So why am I telling y'all changing the culture means rethinking who we are, who brings what strengths, and most important, how to be honest about these issues. That's the point. Okay.
So you brought up the line about the opening day of college, the dean saying, look to your right, look to your left. Mm-hmm. What is it you say at UMBC that is different?
Yeah. And I want you to imagine your students at UMBC, students. You got this? Look at the student to your left. Everybody. Look at the person to your left. Look at the person to your right. Our goal is to make sure all three of you graduate, and if you don't, we fail, and we don't plan to fail. Big round of applause. We don't plan to fail. Self-fulfilling prophecy. And whether it is about leadership in a county with different services and helping in so many different ways, or it's about working with students, whether it's in law enforcement or in education or in healthcare or in accounting or whatever, it is truly, leadership is about believing in what you do, understanding why what you do matters, finding strategies to give you inspiration. I'll never forget when one of the students was saying, how do you get when you get discouraged, right? What do you do? We all get discouraged. We all are dealing with mental health issues. With all the great stuff about Montgomery County, you're human beings. So from family to children to parents to illness, all these are challenges. And I always say we should look first to our own stories. How did we get here? Who washed somebody else's bathroom so you could be here? Because if I go back generations enough for Americans, nobody. How many of you are first generation college? Raise your hands. Very privileged group. Very privileged group. Only about 30. How many are second generation college? How many are third generation college? Wonderful. As I say, you are among the most privileged. How many are 5 generation college? We see 3 or 4 hands. You get my point? So everybody was doing menial labor at some point. You see what I'm saying? And yet those people did that work so you could sit here today. And as my grandmother said to one of her grandchildren years ago, how dare you not do your best when I'm breaking my back so you can go and finish high school? You see? So when we are feeling a little discouraged, remember, you go back a generation or two, and they had it so much harder from any race. They really did. It's that inspiration from stories that can make the difference. And finally, it's the building community among people. You need people you can bounce things off. You need to know people who will tell you the truth. You need people, if they see you, if you look like you're having a health problem, who will care about you enough to say, are you working most closely with your doctor? You know, when new presidents, I work with 75 new presidents in the Harvard program every year from around the world, from University of Ghana to universities in Ireland and to institutions here, and they said, what's the most important thing to remember as a leader, Freeman? I said, the number one thing is to take care of yourself, your health. It's hard to be your best if you're not healthy. And that's why any effort, you see this in the most enlightened companies, universities around, working to talk about health, to say I do take blood pressure medicine. I'm always very important. I'm always working on my health. Always, always. And the big line for me, everybody knows it is, I said since I was a kid, there's a fat Freeman on the inside trying to get out. I've got to slap him back in when he comes up. Get back in there. Anybody? How many of you have had weight issues in your life? Raise your hands. You see what I mean? I mean, it's for a whole lot of people. Now, we Southerners say about people who are very thin, we say the food goes to their feet, right? But for most people, you know where it shows up, right? From your face and everything. But what is my point? And we know that, I'm not just talking vanity, we know that weight is a major issue in health for your pressure and other kinds of things. And as you get older, you begin to realize that. It's that sincerity of caring and a culture that says we care about each other that can make the difference.
I'm worried about my own weight. Now, I'm sitting here like, uh-oh.
You're a young man. You still have time.
It's interesting you were talking about health because I'm looking right at Karen Bass, who's the manager responsible for our healthcare program and all the different things that we have available.
I saw her shaking
with the
her head.
Live Well program. And
Good.
But she has the next question that I'm going to ask.
Okay.
What do you think is the key to being innovative in a highly bureaucratic organization? Because some people here might think we are a bureaucratic organization. So there might be a handful of you who think Montgomery County government is bureaucratic, but just for those people who do, what is your advice for how to be innovative?
Anytime you have people together, the only way you get something done is to have some rules and regulations. We know that. We really do. I often think about the question, you think about car accidents. Just think about it if 2% of people didn't follow the rules. Just 2%. We'd have accidents all over the place. So, we have to start there. We've got to have regulations. But I would say this, it's about encouraging people to have curiosity and to speak their truth. It's about being willing to be uncomfortable. Everybody knows I studied French. When I started 4 years ago, my students said, "Don't you think you're kind of old?" And that was all I needed. I said, bring it on, bring it on. So, je parle français. Qui parle français? Ici. Qui parle français? Nous parlons français ensemble. So, je parle français avec mes étudiants tous les jours. Tous les jours. Every day I'm studying French. All right? Many of my students on campus constantly. And mon professeur est originaire de Normandie. Il est normand. Il est très difficile. But I'm learning every day. What is the point? You never stop learning. If you want innovation, you must assume that we've got so much more to know. I want you to look up the word neoteny, N-E-O-T-E-N-Y. It's in the book Geeks and Geezers, Harvard Business. Neoteny is a science term, but it's used, my scientist knows that, but it's used there to mean being forever young. Being forever young. As we get older, if we're not careful, we become cynical. Been there, done that, right? Young people come in and just knock it out of the way, right? We want to encourage that neoteny. We want all of us, and that means laughing more. If I go to a place and nobody laughs, I say they're not healthy. If they take themselves that seriously, Walter Sondheim died at 99, but he said, Freeman, live life seriously, but don't take it seriously. It means don't take yourself so seriously. So if we can encourage people to speak up and to ask the hard questions, and to speak their truth, and to allow for disagreements. We teach kids how to win. In college, when I'm working with Harvard, presidents up at Harvard, I'm saying, everybody complains about Congress, but all of them came out of our colleges. Think about it. What is it we didn't do? And it has to do with how do we help people to be willing to disagree with some civility and to listen to the other point of view. No side has all the right answers. No side, okay? We can all learn. So it's changing mindset is important, okay?
So I know we only have a few minutes left. What tips do you have to motivate employees, and the same thing for students, in a virtual environment?
Yes, I would say, first of all, emphasize good habits and practices. You heard Mark talk about intermittent fasting, doing different kinds of things to work on your weight, for example. But also, Jackie and I, we've now been married. I got married right out of college, and I finished my math major at 18 and got married at 19. I've been married 52 years. Give my wife a round of applause for that. And here's the point. We are always trying new things. We want the relationship fresh and romantic. Nobody thinks about it. Yeah. You can be romantic at any age. It means being sensitive to the other person. How often do you call somebody you care about to say, I care about you? Did you know that, right? But we do Tai Chi together. We do acupuncture together, right? We exercise. She's doing a Pilates. I got to get my steps in. We study the French. Doing new things and looking into the eyes of people, even when it's virtual. Looking into their eyes, even when it's virtual. Sometimes people can be more intimate virtually than they are in public because we take them for granted, and that makes the difference, all right? Being intentional about building relationships with your colleagues. There are two kinds of people in the world, those who will really depress you and those who will inspire you. Some of y'all are depressing already, I can tell it. That's a joke, folks, I'm just saying. But every day, everybody makes that decision. Am I gonna uplift people? Or am I going to bring them down? All right? That's a decision every day each person makes.
Speaking about winning,
yes.
A proud alum in the audience wanted to know
how far UMBC is going to go in the NCAA tournament this year.
I know for a fact they will be so impressive. Regardless of what happens, I always say this, when our teams leave, you know they have a sense of self. So let me give you one inspiring athletic fact. The fact is, I just got a note from a student and from my coach of the men's soccer team, and they didn't make it to that final area, but 7 of them had a 4.0 this year. Give the men's soccer team a round of applause. I want them to be competitive, but I really want them to learn. You give me a round of applause for learning being more important than anything else.
So what people may not know, the UMBC team is the Retrievers.
Yes.
So, but the name of the Retriever mascot is?
True grit. And there's the word. That even for our students, we need to move away so much from the word smart, because as some of the experts will say, you don't want some kids to feel like they're the super smart ones. What about everybody else, right? The word is grit. Angela Duckworth says it. We've been saying it for years. We call ourselves the house of grit. What really makes a difference, students? How hard you work, how passionate you are, how you bring that intensity to it, right? How you never, never, never give up. I mean, I see the faces. Some people are ready to give me the answer to that problem. They are so ready. I love it. I love that hunger. You want to be hungry, and there's the challenge to Montgomery County. You must remain hungry for your county to be better. And it's not good enough to be the best in Maryland or the best in this country. You want to strive to help our children and their families to live a good life. More than about material things, but about a good life, the values they hold, the dreams they hold. I want to thank you for being so special to my campus, to the University System of Maryland. You help make all of us better, and we are grateful. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Freeman. Another person from around the state has received this award. The county executive is pleased to proclaim you for your many contributions to the people, the young people, the families of Montgomery County, an honorary citizen of Montgomery County, Maryland.
I love it. I love it. Where's my camera? Because I really want it. Do you see my phone right here? Is that Daniel? Take that so I can let people know I'm an honorary member, a resident of Montgomery County.
We're not going to send you a tax bill.
I appreciate that. The question is, do I get a tuition discount to Montgomery College? Thank you. Leadership is about... One more.
Thank you.
Great. Last point. Leadership is about believing in yourself and presenting yourself. How tall do you think Dr. King was? Somebody said 6'2". All right. He was 5'7". But as children, he would teach us, be your best self. Stand in a way that says, so I'm with these guys who are slightly taller, but I'm doing this. You see this? You get the point. Be your best self. Okay, here we go. Thoughts. Words. Actions. Habits. Character. Destiny. What your thoughts say become your. What your words say become your. What your actions they become your. What your habits they become your. What your character becomes your. Destiny. Thank you all very much. Thank you. Very nice. Yeah, this is great, man.
All right. Again, thank you, Freeman, very much, and good luck and congratulations on your next award. It may not be being an honorary resident of Montgomery County, but a national award from the American Council of Education. So, we have a few things that we want to move through, and trust me, we're not going to be here until 11 o'clock. You may have seen the agenda. We're not going to be here till 11 o'clock unless David asked me, so when you do your evaluations, David asked me if we could move this to later in the day. He suggested we do these things at 5 o'clock at night. So if you would, yes. And Kathy Durbin will host it. Where's Kathy Durbin? There you go. That's an insider joke for people. So I want to go ahead and recognize some of the people who have retired or soon to retire, and we may have, well, certainly a first while I'm CAO, and I don't know if this is the first that's ever happened, but we are recognizing 2 retirees from the same family. Amazing sisters, Angela Talley and Monica Talley, who are both retired. Angela, a longtime head of corrections. Did you say Angela the other day, 32 years? 32 and a half years, thank you. And Monica was here for how long? Because I don't think she's 32 years. And she was recognized by the county council the other day. I think you said your father was a 37-year employee of the city of Rockville. So your family has made tremendous contributions to our community. Not quite the Wins family or the Davis family. For Dr. Keisha Davis is here, and Greg Wins, their families have been in Montgomery County for multiple generations. So our soon-to-be retirees, Sue Simek, 42 years in HHS. If you're here, go ahead and stand up. Sharon Crow, 25 years in HHS. Dr. Raymond Kroll, 13 years in HHS. Dan Hibbert, 20 years in the Department of Transportation. Steve Lampier, 28 years in Fire and Rescue Services. And Pete Chubb, 22 years in Fire and Rescue Services. So some of the people who have retired since the last QLF, Susan Malagari from Corrections, Shelford Gilliam, also from Corrections, I think. So John Wheel from DOT, June Evans from Fire and Rescue, Dan McHugh from Housing, David Salem from HHS. Pope Fence, give a round of applause here. Thomas Razio from HHS, Barbara Andrews from HHS, and Monica Talley from HHS. So while David Salem retired, Pope Fence Salem is still working very hard in HCA and promises to go nowhere. And then for our newly promoted managers, and boy, they give me the hardest first last name for me. Boris Rakovich is going to be the new head of the Board of Elections. Boris, I think you're here. There is Boris. Right there. So Yamizi Al-Budu in General Services, Bodo. So thank you. Brad Weatherly in General Services. Kamala Robinson in DHCA. James Bridgers, Dr. James Bridgers in HHS. Elizabeth Elliott in HHS. Elizabeth Nash in Corrections. Edward Wade in Corrections. Then moving on to DOT, we've got James Dela Cruz, Pooja Kapoor, Kusanu, oh, I'm so sorry, Karuna Dasu, Reza Zarif, so that's the transportation facility, and permitting services, we've got Tom Whedon, Brian Kim, and Patricia Wolford. In finance, we've got Jed Millard. So Jed had a seat reserved up here, but decided to sit way in the back. From Fire and Rescue, Scott Hoglander. One of our new assistant chiefs for the police department, Nicholas Augustine. I saw him earlier in the back.